the little red button.
Did I do it right? I think so.
You know the little red button? Hit the little red
What's
button.
that from? Is that from Minions?
You don't see a lot of movies.
No, I don't.
This is from Men in Black.
Oh, okay. So sorry.
Yeah.
It's not one I don't remember it very well, to be honest. Although it was one of the stronger Vince D'Onofrio.
No one knows who that is.
The guy who is the sugar water.
Sugar.
Yeah. Say you wanted water.
We should.
Sugar water. Edgar, you look like your skin's falling off.
Edgar.
Edgar.
Who's that?
Yeah, that's how you say Edgar, but it's Edgar.
No, who is that?
What, the actress woman?
Yeah.
I actually don't know her name, but I could say other things she's in probably.
Say it.
I think it's really on the spot.
Welcome to the Corner Podcast Special Edition. Today we're going to be talking about trans rights and weird things that are happening in the United States of America with trans issues and HRT. And later we're going to have a special guest. So make sure you stick on by for it.
Yeah, do it. Stick right to the side of us.
Make sure you stay close.
Like one of those gummy hands you get at the bowling alley. They stick to the wall.
They get
anyway,
so dirty.
So now you said HRT, and that's a little acronym, abbreviation, and not everyone may know what that stands for. So why don't you start there?
Hormone replacement therapy.
But explain to me like I'm 5.
Hormone replacement therapy is something most trans people do to put the opposite chemicals into their body to what their body does from birth.
Yeah. I mean, that's a...
Yeah.
Yeah. Or to make it in a more even distribution or something in the case of trans masc people.
Yeah. And also, it's a thing cis people do as well.
Yeah.
You can take hormone replacement therapy after menopause if you're a cis woman.
Yeah.
And many cis men do hormone replacement therapy as well.
Take testosterone.
So it's not only trans specific.
Yeah. And that's something that I wanted to say like off the jump is that although we are discussing gender affirming care as it relates to trans people, there's a lot of things that cis people do that are gender affirming care and procedures that have never been looked at in that scope.
Correct.
By like on a whatever global scale, whatever, but say a cis woman gets breast implants. That's a gender affirming procedure because she's affirming her womanhood.
Absolutely.
In that way. And like men doing testosterone, cis men, that's gender affirming care.
It is.
Yeah.
And in the United States, specifically these places like Alabama, Florida, there's a lot of legislation and a lot of discussions about trans rights, about puberty blockers, about when kids should be able to take them if they're safe. Is this life-saving and necessary care?
Yeah.
The majority of it is not really based in science. It's based in a lot of thoughts and opinions, and we're cherry-picking ideas in order to make cases. And
when you say that, you mean the legislatures and political figures, news figures, whatever, that are trying to make points against gender-affirming care.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's because people don't really know trans people. Most people don't interact with trans people on a daily basis. So it's an easy villain of sorts to make. You know, we can take drag and put it next to being transgender. And obviously, we as queer people understand they're not connected at all.
Yeah.
But for a cishet person living in a state that isn't super progressive, it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah. So they just draw the conclusion that like all drag queens are trying to brainwash kids into being trans or to being gay or whatever.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And these things are comical when you say it out loud. But the issue is that we're starting to actually talk about this stuff in like a very big level.
Yeah.
And that has a trickle-down effect to where if these laws pass, if they don't pass, the damage has already been done with this stuff. And doctors are going to be hesitant. and parents are going to be hesitant.
Yeah.
Insurance companies are going to be hesitant. It just kind of makes a bad ecosystem around everything transgender.
Yeah. Just because I said before when we were talking about this, it just poisons the entire well of like, it's a fear-based community around it because doctors aren't going to want to engage with it because they don't want to be targeted. They don't want to receive death threats,
which is
a thing that's happening. Yeah. Parents aren't going to want to engage with it because they're scared for their child's safety or their safety.
Yeah.
Which is like catch-22 because you're scared for your child's safety because they're trans, so you don't get them HRT or gender affirming care, and then your kid is fucking cripplingly depressed. Like,
and the ripple effect of that is, like, if you are a parent that cares and wants to get your kid HRT in Florida or something, you have other parents that don't understand and are probably going to look at you bad and probably going to say things about you that suck.
Yeah.
And that's hard. Like, the whole thing, it's like the support systems are being taken away.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just one of those, like, non-tangibles that a law can't protect.
Yeah, or explain to people, because I don't think looking at it from this point of view is a thing many people outside of our experience would do.
Yeah.
Because people look at it and say like, oh, how awful. They're trying to make these laws to ban these things, yada, yada. But they don't look at the damage that is already done just by the discussion existing of the, you know, now people are listening to these people talk about this shit that's based on nothing or just based on like bunk science or like random quotes and stuff that they're parsing together, and they formulate their entire opinion on trans people on that. Yeah. And it, as you said, trickles down and just makes it like a aggressive like environment, period.
Yeah. When I was having like FFS, I had to fight with the insurance company because they were saying that it was cosmetic.
Yeah. What is, can you say what FFS fully is?
Right here.
Tell the
facial feminization surgery. That's how I became attractive. But it's essentially a group of procedures that you do. So like a nose job, things like that.
Yeah.
And a nose job is one of the things.
Yeah.
In the ingredient list. And cis people would tell me all the time, how is that any different than a cis girl wanting a nose job? And it's extraordinarily different.
It's incredibly
because
different.
it impacts your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And that is gender affirming care.
Yeah.
That's not a, you know, me wanting to be cuter.
Yeah.
It was me wanting to be able to go and live a life that was normal.
Yeah. To be a woman and be seen as a woman.
Yeah. So it's pretty fucking important.
Yeah.
And insurance, that's only going to hurt that case.
Yeah.
You know, that's only going to hurt insurance. Like there's a large list of procedures that are covered, which I think people don't understand. Like bottom surgery for trans women, covered pretty much. Orchiectomy, covered pretty much.
Yeah.
Some people will cover laser hair removal. But it's weird. It's like this FFS one doesn't, because it's not as black and white as the other procedures.
And I will say, even though some things are covered by insurance, it doesn't mean it's a straightforward, easy process.
No.
So like there's hurdles at every aspect already of being trans without this added thing that's happening right now with the trans debate and the okay groomer and the whatever shit. And now it's just such a thing that we're already kind of scared to be visibly trans in public.
Yeah.
But now it's so scared that like you're a fucking bar, or not a bar, someplace that was going to do drag reading hour or something in Seattle was just shot. Like they shot like the front face of the building.
Yeah.
Like it's scared to go places that are supposed to be our safe havens.
Yes.
Like
it's a lot of ingrained homophobia, ingrained transphobia. I would say mainly homophobia.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that people that are doing this even have a grasp on what being trans is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, it's always been now we're just talking shit, but it's always been the view from people who don't understand transness as we're perverts.
Yeah, and it's a lot of like, I feel like with drag queens specifically and trans women is that you're given a gift of being, you know, born into a male body,
Yeah.
and you're giving that up. And like we view that as the biggest
Slight against.
it's like you were privileged, you were given a thing, and now
Yeah.
you're doing something else.
And I don't get how
And that's
people
deeply ingrained.
Yeah, and I don't get how people can't look at that from the flip side of, yeah, I was born with this privilege, and I was so like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was so unhappy that I gave that up
Yeah.
and went through this really hard fucking process
Yeah.
to be myself and be happy.
Yeah.
And that just takes me back to the people being trans for attention argument,
Yeah.
all that shit. And to which I always say, like, who would do this?
Yeah.
Like for fun. Like,
Yeah.
no one would do this for fun. Like
Yeah. So, and I think the thing that kind of sucks about it is that there's no real nice button on what's going on right now.
yeah.
There's no like call this number and to help situation.
Yeah.
It's just kind of an ongoing thing, and trans people are the pivot point. But I do think that the one thing to keep in mind is that everyone on the right isn't Alex Jones. You know, there's a lot of people that are in the middle, you know, and everyone on the left isn't you know, whatever they villainize us as.
I don't know. Yeah.
But
Woke liberals.
yeah.
Whatever Jordan Peterson's talking about.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's important to remember that.
Yeah. And in that vein, which is I'm sure something we'll touch on later, there is no number to call. There is no like this protest happening now necessarily, although there are demonstrations and stuff happening all the time. It's something that we have to engage with at a more personal level in educating people,
Yeah.
in being unfortunately patient and tolerant,
Yeah.
and like spoon feeding people stuff, like actual information about why HRT and gender affirming care is life saving.
Yeah.
And being educated on those things so we can be a positive force in people's lives.
Yeah. I always hear and respect when people say, it's not my job to educate you. I get it.
Yeah.
But also, if we're not doing it, then like,
Then no one is for us.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, maybe carry a couple extra spoons in your pocket.
Yeah.
If you're trans woman, not your pocket because you probably don't have them.
Probably a purse.
A purse potentially.
Yeah.
But you should just keep an extra spoon in there.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe do the work.
Yeah.
Because like you said, no one's doing it for us.
Yeah.
People are actively doing it.
Against us.
Yeah.
And we have to be louder and try harder. And it sucks it's on us, but
It does. And most people are not malicious, I don't think.
yeah, they're just ignorant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just need to know. And that's why I brought up the polar extremes that we kind of paint people with. I think that that's an extremely small percentage of people that are on that side.
Far end of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
People just hear the loudest voice in the room. And right now those people are really loud.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what people are consuming.
And it also works with the way the world's set up. You know, Alex Jones is going to fly through the internet.
Yeah.
Because it's wild the shit he's saying.
Yeah.
You know? Even we're talking about him right now.
Yeah.
You know? And like you saying like some level-headed argument about why trans women are women or why, you know, whatever. It's like, that's not going to do the same numbers.
Yeah. It doesn't
You know?
incite excitement
Yeah.
in people. But it's the thing that's important to go back to.
Yeah.
Because as angry as we are and as like scared as we are, rightfully so, you get more flies with honey than vinegar.
Yeah.
And that's why if someone misgenders me, I don't fucking chew them out, even if they deserve it. Misgenders me through ignorance,
Yeah.
not through malice.
Yeah.
I say these are my pronouns. You know, this is it. Like, so use those, whatever. And I try to be like kind
Yeah.
and say like whatever things without giving them excuses.
I don't think most people know what pronouns are.
Period.
Honestly.
No,
you know,
yeah.
It's like, I don't think that most people even understand, like, I think a lot of the argument of like, you know, the they them pronoun thing is like, they don't even understand, like, they fundamentally forget that they them is a fucking pronoun.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even like remember English.
Yeah.
You know?
It's that example that's a meme that's like someone left their purse at the store or like someone left their wallet at the store the other day. So I wanted to find them to give it back to them.
Boom.
And you got to the end of the story and now you understand that they, them is a pronoun that can apply to a single person.
Yeah.
Ha. Anyway.
You're also in Florida not allowed to sing in a swimsuit.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that.
A lot of people don't know that. Also, a lot of people don't understand the difference between sexuality and gender identity. But, you know, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
Are we, Florida?
No. One time I was at Blizzard Beach and I sang out loud and a man tackled me straight to the ground. And that's the real reason, if you're a fan of the Corn Corner long running, that I don't like Blizzard Beach and water parks. I had a traumatic experience there.
From being tackled.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't have been singing.
I didn't know the laws, you know?
They don't give you a handbook when you come on out.
No. Just
Well-
like they don't give you a handbook when you come out as trans.
Yeah.
So,
So what we did was we brought our friend Sam on.
Yeah.
Sam's a reporter.
yeah.
Sam is going to talk to us about these things, and this is an episode of the Corn Corner Learns.
Anyway, transition time. Literally, gotta go do my tee shot. Hey.
Hey. Today we have on Sam Greenspan. Sam is a reporter in Los Angeles. You've reported for Vice, 99% Invisible, and NPR, and you've currently been doing work on the trans catastrophe happening in Florida.
True story. Yeah.
This is a true story.
Never heard it referred to as such. Catastrophe is it's a good way to put it.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm an amateur reporter.
Yeah. Have you been moonlighting?
Yes, we've been talking.
Yeah.
So I guess, when did you start reporting on Florida trans stuff?
Yeah. So I'm a trans person and I've been sort of been following trans issues across the country. I was recently a staff producer at Vice News and was doing some work with a reporter, Gianna Taboni, there about a trans girl in Texas that she's been following named Kai Shapley. And so I was just visiting my parents. I was visiting Florida to visit my family last April of this year. And I was talking to a friend of a family member who does healthcare with kids there. And they're like, "What do you work on?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing the story right now about this trans girl in Texas." And she's and this family friend was just like, "Oh yeah, we got this weird email at work about trans stuff. I don't really understand it, but maybe you can take a look at it." And so she showed me this email that she got from the Florida Department of Health that basically said, "Yeah, you should not give gender-affirming care to kids who come in to see you for these reasons." And it had like a bunch of like citations to like medical journals and stuff, and saying like, because of, you know, research that says this, like, for example, this paper says that 80% of kids who identify as trans end up detransitioning or desisting. Right. Okay.
Sorry.
That's the correct response.
I just want to be like, I really would love to see the work cited on this.
Well,
and like get into it.
So that's what I did, is that I was just like, well, the first thing that sort of stood out to me was that this didn't look like a research paper. It was like super, it was really internet-y the way that it was written, where it was kind of the things where it would have like, you know, when you like do the thing where like every it'll have like a sentence and like every word in the sentence is like a different link.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's just, it just looked like it was written by someone who just spent a lot of time online and less time in medical journals.
Yeah.
You can get right on the mic.
Okay, sure. And I was like, I at the time I was mentioned to the managing editor at Vice News, Leah Feiger. I was like, I bet if you just looked into this, like they wouldn't actually say this. And she's
Sure
like,
enough.
she's like, well, why don't you do it? I was like, all right, cool.
I will.
So I just started clicking the links, and then I just started seeing. So, for example, this one that 80% figure, there's a doctor out of the Netherlands named Thomas Steensma. And basically what this paper said was that like in this small group of like, I don't know,
12 people
25 or 30, children that we studied, 80%, desisted in these circumstances or whatever.
Yeah.
And they and then the Florida Department of Health took this to mean like, oh, well, 80% of all, anyway. So I wrote to this guy, Thomas Steensma, and I was like, do you know that you were cited in this? And he was like, no, it doesn't surprise me. They're pulling this shit all the time. And can I swear here?
Oh, yes.
So
You can say yes.
so great. And he didn't, for the record, he did not say they pull this shit all the time. That's my paraphrase. But then he also made the point that's like, okay, well, that's not true. But even if that was true, there's still like 20% of kids that you're saying would want this care.
So even so, fuck them, I guess.
Right. So he was sort of dispirited, that found out about this. And I also talked to this doctor named Dr. Kenneth Pang in Australia, who he actually had written an article for the Journal of the American Medical Association saying that like, hey, fellow doctors, we need to do a better job keeping track of how our information is used because it's being used in kind of divisive ways. And then like something that he wrote got like misquoted, and he was just like, he said it, he was like, his heart sank when he saw my email because he was just like, God, like because he knows exactly how this happens. And basically what they took from him is that, he just basically did a study like 5 years ago that looked at it was just a book report of like, what is the available research out there about like, I think it was about like hormones and I think it was about puberty blockers and trans kids.
Yeah.
And just like not even doing any research, just saying, or not even doing any like studies rather, just saying what research has already been done. I'm just going to like collect it all into one place based on this criteria and just like report what is there, what's there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and then like in his, conclusion basically says that, we could basically, here's what we have, but some more information would be helpful to have.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty standard thing that you would see in a medical journal. Like, here's what we know, and we could know more about
findings
X.
are.
Yeah. and then the Florida Department of Health latched onto that and they were like, oh, well.
You don't know shit.
Exactly. That they're like, well, you say, well, more research should be done.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then maybe we shouldn't give anyone care until we have more research.
Yeah.
Another thing that was really disturbing was that they, there's kind of like two universes of people that Florida was kind of pulling from. There's one that's just actual doctors that are, doing like work that for the, that they want to help trans kids and kind of doing research around that. And then there is also a smaller but much more radical contingent of doctors who are still trying to fight, the culture wars. And there's like one guy named Paul Cruz, who's a professor. I'd have to look at my notes, but I think Washington University at St. Louis. And he's like a member of the Catholic Medical Association, which is still advocating for conversion therapy for gay kids or adults, which is illegal in many states, right? And
abstinence only sex education.
Exactly. Right. And this other organization called the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine out of Idaho, which is kind of a fake organization that does a lot of this work of just pulling together all of these like pull quotes from these different medical journals and saying like, well, they said this, so obviously it's that. This doctor said that we need more evidence, so that therefore we shouldn't give it to anyone. And it's like, and it's all of this like bad faith reporting and collection of information. So once I kind of understood that, I basically reported for Vice that, well, Florida's just doing this, like, it's just cherry picking. They're just like, they clearly have an agenda that is to deny trans kids and adults medical care.
Yeah.
And this is just like the cover they're doing to this is just how they're doing it.
Yeah.
There's no part of this process that actually has curiosity about like what is the best way to help kids with gender dysphoria,
Or like moves to learn to do what they say they need to do in order to provide gender affirming care. There's no moves towards that.
Exactly.
It's just like we're just using this as the excuse to not do it, and there it ends.
Yeah, and they're just, you know, and the one person I talk about in the story is a public information officer for the Florida Health Department, Jeremy Redfern, who just like is extremely online and just like dunks on like trans people on Twitter all day.
Cool.
It's like your tax dollars at work. And it's just really, it's like, you know, I guess, and I will say that like as a trans person, when I first started like looking into this research, and like, you know, I'm not like, I mean, I've been a reporter for a long time, but I'm not a science reporter, and like I don't like read a lot of medical journals.
Yeah.
And so I look at this and I'm like, are they like, I actually don't know what they're saying at first, and I have to kind of like parse through like what they're actually, it's hard, it's like take some literacy to figure out what they're saying. And I was like nervous, like, you know, from, you know, what if there really are doctors out there who are saying that maybe medical care, maybe the kind of care that like I'm engaging in that I wish I had access to when I was a kid is bad. But like what I found out pretty quickly is that they're not. They're like, they're all saying like the ones who are like, except for the sort of like wingnuts, you know, from the Catholic Medical Association, who are again also associated with places like, you know, the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is you know, a hate group, as designated by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So basically anyone who like actually is a doctor engaging in the treatment of like trans people is like, this is the stuff that we already know, and shouldn't be a problem.
So I want HRT in Florida.
Yeah.
What are the barriers that I'm going to, you know, find in Florida versus here? Like, how is this actually materializing for people in Florida?
Right. So, right after, or as we were publishing this story for Vice News, the Florida Department of Health, or sorry, actually it was a different organization in Florida, they basically like commissioned a study from a bunch of known anti-trans doctors, including one of who is a dentist. And saying,
so
like,
you talk about teeth?
Yeah, like, sir, what do you care?
she has a research post. She has a research post at McMaster University, which is there's been some really excellent reporting around like how this one university in Canada has basically become this hub of like disinformation and activism against trans people. But anyways, this like people who are associated with this university and other people like the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, et cetera, like came together, and Florida was like, okay, you 5 or so like people who clearly have an agenda here, why don't you put together the recommendations? And you know, they Florida paid for like 100 some odd pages of, you know, documents from them, and lo and behold, they advocated for ending gender affirming care. And so if you are a person looking for HRT in Florida and you use Medicaid, the state sponsored low income health insurance, you can't get it and that's true if you are a minor or an adult. Since then, Florida had a real weird kangaroo court kind of hearing where they
define kangaroo court.
Oh gosh, what's a kangaroo? Like a, you know, it was ostensibly a public hearing meant to, you know, basically hold up like, here are the things that we know are true, and then like logic will prevail and reasonable. But it's like
It's just like straw man.
It was
like whatever.
It was a stacked agenda. It was like basically like had a bunch of trans deniers, like anti-trans activists. They also held this thing at a hotel in the Orlando airport, which was weird, which was just weird, but also like what, you know,
This little Four Seasons Total Garden.
That's all I was thinking.
this actually wasn't a hotel. But
It's actually in the pool. If we could meet in the pool area.
well, so they did this. So the activists who went there to protest were speculating that they did this, one, because parking is really expensive and you can't just like, so like getting there is difficult.
Yeah, it seems very inaccessible.
And like because airports are under, you know, TSA authority, that if anyone was, you know, arrested for civil disobedience, that might be chargeable as
It's
a federal crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Malicious.
nuts.
Yeah. That's Florida. So they basically had this stacked house of people who were advocating against gender-affirming care for the most part. There were a couple that were, you know, from who actually like are trying to advocate, including Meredith McNamara, who's a professor and physician at Yale School of Medicine, and they actually like cut her off midway through, like, oh, your Zoom's breaking up, we can't hear you, and they just like cut her off. And there actually were a lot of trans activists and allies who were in attendance, and they were, you know, you watch the feed of the Florida channel, which is like the, you know, public access, like you could hear people like visibly protesting and trying to like shout down just incorrect and hateful things that people were saying. But then they, you know, then the Board of Medicine, the Board of Health, like went ahead and basically said like, okay, yeah, we're gonna deny that any kid wanting gender-affirming care should be able to get it in Florida. So right now, it's not exactly illegal, but it's not like allowed per the Florida Board of I forget, it's the Board of Health or Board of Medicine, to be able to obtain it. Like there are doctors who are probably still prescribing it. I'm not in Florida. I haven't like been like on the ground, like pounding that pavement yet as myself as a journalist, but like, I know that, you know, as with these things, like there will be doctors who will endeavor to get the, you know, their patients the care they need, but there's a chilling effect, right? That like, you know, that there are some doctors who might just be like, it's not worth it. I just don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to jail.
So it sounds like Florida's cherry picking papers and research and then using that to pass the legislation that they want out.
Right. It's not even cherry picking papers. It's like cherry picking sentences from papers. Yeah, in a lot of cases. Yeah.
So who's there? Like, what are the positives out of like the organizations that are working to like change this? Is there anyone on the ground that is fighting, you know?
Yeah. So there are people who are trying to, you know, reverse this like tide of history. One of them I mentioned, Meredith McNamara at Yale, who is doing a lot of incredible work of just trying to like doing rapid response like to legislation. So actually I learned about her and her work with Yale because just as I was about to publish this thing with Vice, being like, you know, I kind of like went through in my very like non-science brain trying to like wrap my head around what these things are saying, basically put out a paper from Yale School of Medicine saying like pretty much the exact same thing that I found in my reporting and I found with my editors and in our reporting. And so it's kind of like co-signing on what reporters are doing. It's also like trying to get out in front of the mic and like challenge when bad laws are on the table. And there's also an activist, I believe she's in Florida, named Zinnia Jones, who's doing incredible documentation of like what was happening at the Florida Board of Health meeting and just basically fact checking like every single thing that happened, every single thing that was said in that meeting. Wow. So there are really incredible people, and I can send links to that too. Yeah. That there are like who are trying, but it's like it's really hard. It's like it's just there's just, you know, and especially what's can be really dispiriting about doing this kind of work is that, it only I'm really reminded of this phrase. I think it's attributed to Mark Twain, but who knows who said it first. But like, the lie is halfway around the world while the truth is still tying its shoes, right? That like it takes like 30 seconds. I mean, like that first like press release or internal document that I found that led me to that whole reporting journey that I saw from this friend of a family member in Florida. I'm sure it took them like 3 minutes to write that, right? And then it took me like months to chase everything down, and because of course, if you get one thing wrong, then then they jump in and be like, oh well, they got this wrong, so everything else must be wrong too.
Yeah.
And so just to make sure it's really solid and bulletproof, like you can spend your whole life, and we saw this with Trump too. You can spend your whole life just like trying to disprove things that are so obviously true, and it's not a great way to live.
Yeah,
but
I think that's why this whole thing is so daunting. Like when people are looking at this from the outside, because I know when it seems like a government, be it state or national or whatever, is like enacting these things, a lot of people don't even know what level is it like. What level is this thing at that they're proposing? Who's voting for this? Do we get to vote for this? Like all that shit. And where this trans stuff is in Florida right now, I don't know what level it's at right now. All I know is these people are being god awful, and there's a lot of people listening to them. So
I mean, I think the reality is that most people don't know what's going on right now, because it's so day to day. It's so like a little bit of like the Spider-Man pointing at each other, like with who actually has the authority here. Yeah. And like what, basically it seems like what it needs is just the way that medicine has, I mean, look, the medical establishment has a lot of problems and has in the past, and especially like towards trans people. Yeah. But like, like, and there hasn't been like this level of just like intentional interference, probably since like the AIDS crisis, I guess, and the kind of disinformation around that. But even, there's plenty of disinformation around the AIDS crisis at the beginning, and there still is, obviously. But like a lot of that was like people didn't know what was causing AIDS, how it was spread, and this is all stuff that has been like just like all of the care that is given to children, adults, like this is also what we know. We know it works.
It's like willing ignorance and obvious hatred like towards whatever is different.
Exactly. Yeah. And the reason that we know this like isn't controversial, that it does work, is because all of the medicine that is available to trans people, like actually, I don't know if maybe some trivia, I don't know if you two know this, but like what percentage of drugs that trans people use were created for trans people?
None. Like,
Zero.
None. Yeah.
Zero. Yeah. So
that's because also like no drugs are like so many drugs that we make, like boner pills, weren't for that. Like it's just like,
So like, right. So like trans women or non-binary people like might take, like Cialis or whatever, but like it wasn't. It
was a blood pressure medication,
right?
And
right,
like how many? I know more.
Oh, I thought you were saying well, it was also was invented.
Oh no, I was just making fun of cis people. I know more cis men on testosterone than I do like fellow trans masculine people, whatever, on testosterone.
Well, because the testosterone was invented for cis people.
Yeah.
I mean, and same with estrogen.
I feel like people don't know that.
Yeah, and the thing that they're talking about, this is like why it's so disingenuous to talk about puberty blockers as being like really dangerous for kids. It's like, who do you think this was invented for? Yeah. It was invented for cis children with precocious puberty, which is like early onset puberty, people who are like maybe going through puberty at like 7-8 years old.
Yeah, like girls
like
getting
that.
their period in like second grade.
Exactly.
Blockers.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like, and so the idea is to just like hit pause on their puberty so that they can kind of like, whatever, go into it more with their age cohort. Yeah. Right. And now this is sort of being seen as a, like, it's like, oh, well, is it reversible? It's like, well, if you stop, I mean, is it reversible for cis kids? Like, you just stop taking it.
Just look at, there's data actually for it. So like,
and all the people I've talked to there seems to be a lot of misinformation around things like blockers and hormones and things. Is it a malicious intent or is it just not knowing?
I think it's both. I think that I think there are a lot of people who just don't know. I do think that there are a lot of people in positions of like political power or elected officials who like, who maybe just either don't know trans people or who have like kind of get their information from an echo chamber. But also like there are people who are, willfully out there doing damage. And if you look at the kinds of like the people who are the sort of the forefront of this like culture war, who are trying to like argue against the, against gender affirming care as being helpful and a thing in general, like it always, like if you can always follow those two like people who are like, still arguing that like marriage is between a man and a woman, and like who are still mad about who will be like anti-porn activists or who have been anti-gay, or it's just sort of the culture war du jour, I think. And
it's a new hot topic to hate.
Yeah, the new hate. And just so it's you said the date, I actually forget what date. Today's Friday the 8th. And just like last night on Twitter, there's I don't even know if I want to like give them the the like
notice,
like, give them the acknowledgement, but like there's
some anti-trans group
there's basically these like Barry Weiss and associated writers, Matt Taibbi, have been basically given the keys to the Twitter kingdom and meant to go look for anti right wing or anti conservative bias within Twitter. Mm-hmm. And they're like, would you believe that the founder of Libs of TikTok got seven account times that her account was shut down this year? It's like I'm actually surprised they did that much, to be honest. But yeah, just like that, they're basically these right wing trolls who are formerly left wing, but now kind of these like right wing darlings who are literally inside of the Twitter infrastructure, looking possibly looking at people's DMs and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the people included in this is like Abigail Schreier, who like wrote this book called Irreparable Harm, which is basically just like an anti-trans like propaganda book. Who are they're it's like, and you cannot be like anti-trans and also not like it just dovetails so concretely with like people who are anti-abortion or people who are like Trump apologists. It's all part of the same package.
So why is journalism so important in the fight for trans rights?
Well, journalism is basically just the attempt to figure out what is true, right? Mm-hmm. It's that, journalists are people who just try to look at the events of the day and figure out who is telling the truth, who is gaining power by, telling mistruths, and just trying to like bring up, I almost hesitate to say like the truth now, but right. But it's like, it's
just, like the unbiased, like,
well,
like
I mean, I think that everyone's going to have a bias.
Well, there's inherent bias in like all aspects of life, but like,
but basically just like things that, if we poke at enough and look at it from enough angles, we still know to be true.
Yeah.
And I think that, the Trump era, which I would say that we're still in, has been so damaging because it's this sort of like, well, who knows what's true, and it just is the case that some things are true and some things are not. And so I think I mean, as a journalist, I do wonder like if we're actually doing anything that matters, but like, excuse me, I will say that it was heartening to see that the ACLU noted my reporting in a lawsuit that they're currently engaging with in the state of Florida. Also, there was a state lawmaker in Florida who was like mentioning the reporting I was doing.
That's
in
awesome.
Attempt to try to get Florida to reverse some of these things, which like, yeah, I hope so. I mean, like it hasn't happened yet, but I think like, a lot of times journalists, we play the long game and we're just hopeful that if we just can say like the truth enough times in enough ways that it will eventually permeate the culture and inform people in making like decisions that lead towards like, justice for people. But it's tough because like, The Guardian has basically just decided to become an anti-trans rag at this point, and the New York Times is not far behind them.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just waiting for it. From the New York Times, frankly, like.
Well, they just, I think a week or two ago had a thing that was basically about like, well, puberty blockers are great, but what about the bone density of trans kids? And actually, it was when I was talking with Meredith McNamara, the Yale professor, it was just like, well, of course trans kids have poor bone density. They're not allowed to play sports, And
also, it's like, what about cis women on birth control?
Yeah, exactly.
That's bone density is less in them, and there's more like more osteoporosis in women who've been on birth control, like whatever. It's,
right. And it's like, and we just like, I mean, are they related? Like maybe, but we know that it works.
Yeah.
And what's more important than, maybe having some decreased bone density is like, maybe not getting pregnant, especially in a state that like where you can't get an abortion.
And just like in trans kids, it's like, I'd rather my kid have some weak bones than one fucking kill themselves. It's an easy choice.
So when you said journalism is about finding the power dynamics and finding where the money flows and things like that, what does Florida have to gain in making it so difficult for trans people to live?
It's something I do ask myself a lot. I mean, I think what they have to gain is just that, Florida's a place with a lot of challenges, right? I mean, it's an extremely polarized group of like electorate. It is already being affected by climate change. There are a lot of different kinds of like racial identities and ethnicities that have kind of it's very like complex place politically. A lot of like different communities. Just like for example, like you have like a large Cuban population, especially in South Florida, where I grew up.
I'm Cuban, so I was going to say even like Cuban Republicans.
Well, I think most Cuban Americans like are Republicans.
Yeah, and that's like I think shocks a lot of people. That's whatever,
but
different tangent.
But Florida's a very complex place. I mean, it includes places like Miami, which is basically like the capital of Latin America, and then you also have places like the state capital Tallahassee, which is like still proud of the fact that it was like the state capital that didn't fall to the Union during the Civil War. Right. So it's like, I mean, it's the joke in Florida is that like the more north you go, the more south you get.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I grew up in South Florida in kind of this pocket of like, it's like sort of the Caribbean. It's sort of like upstate New York. There's like, it's like you can get like jerk chicken, but also like deli.
Yeah.
It's a very complex place. And like I was saying about climate change, like there are, like the storms are going to keep coming, and there's like a lot of like economic crises right now, and basically just like there's a lot of challenges to the people who govern Florida, as with anywhere, and it's just really easy to just point to a group of people and be like, they're the problem. If they're the problem, it's not. Don't look at us. We're doing our jobs, and it's just it's so much easier to hire, a public information officer who will just spend all day trolling people on Twitter for funsies than it is to like have them actually be accountable to the government and try to like, for, I don't know, like get people COVID relief.
Yeah. So like in that with the scapegoating and stuff of like, they're the problem, what was the fucking problem? Like, and you know what I mean? And I know that this is like a rhetorical question in a way, but like how it's like the inciting of outrage by like these people, and that trans people are just the best target to do that and get other people on their side. Is that like?
I mean, I can't claim to know the
fair.
psychology of other people, but I mean, the math checks out.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that's always happened.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that being your home state?
I'm very proud of not being born in Florida. I was born upstate New York. And
To be clear,
not a native Floridian, but I grew up. Look, I will say there's a lot that I really love about Florida. Like I dunk on it a lot.
it's so dunkable.
It's very dunkable. Florida man. I think the saddest Florida man I ever saw was like, unhoused drug user accidentally burns down state's oldest tree.
That's awesome.
Actual headline in Florida.
It's amazing.
Like it's very dunkable. It's a very weird place that feels very different. But it also like there is a part of me that does love it. Like it's if you spend time there, like it has like this like weird spooky quality of the air.
Yeah.
And, like if you've seen like the movie Moonlight, for instance, like I feel like when I saw Moonlight, I was like, this is the first thing I've ever seen that's like really just nailed it.
Ren
like,
has no idea what you're talking about, but she's
I
seen
think it's
about
a
two
movie, I
movies.
think.
Oh,
It's
it
a
certainly
movie.
is.
It
Yeah.
is a movie.
It is one of them.
It is a movie that won some awards.
Wow.
A few.
A few.
Maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah, but it's like it just it's like is hostile in so many ways, but just like I don't know, like biking around in Florida at nighttime, like in the summer, is like you just can't like it's indescribable.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredible, and like it has like really weird nature. Like it's like they have a whole kind of boat that only exists in the Everglades because it's like a boat with a giant fan in the
fan
back.
boat. Yeah.
It's like
There's goddamn dinosaurs in the water down there.
pretty much. I mean, like
Are the alligators transphobic as well, or do they not discriminate?
I would not want to see an experiment about that, frankly.
Okay.
But
I feel like they don't discriminate.
I feel like I'm just going to go on a limb and say that trans people are less likely to wind up like, off the boat in the Everglades of their own choice.
A good point.
Is that because trans people don't like boats? What is the...
I think I would say that trans people are good at risk assessment.
Okay, that makes sense.
A very nice way to put it.
Yeah. And we also have bad bone density, so
Yeah, so
we're
we
not
can't
going
be-
to get in the
Well,
water.
maybe that's less attractive
Yeah.
to an alligator. I don't know, but anyways, there are things that like I really do love about it, and like my mom still lives there. I still go there, for like holidays and stuff. And I want to, and I don't want it to be the joke, the butt of all these jokes. But it's something that I'm kind of like in conversation with my mom right now. I'm like, am I gonna keep going back because it's weird? And I think that the chances of me getting hate crime there are fairly low, but
But it feels bad.
it just feels bad.
Yeah.
And
I know. I went there for top surgery, and it felt kind of sketchy. Like being like going there, I was like but then coming home, I was like, I hope no one in security wants to like look or anything. Like I have a problem because I was just like, this state is sketchy. Like
it's just, I mean, and like I will say that like being here in California or like in Washington State, like it is really easy to be like look down your nose at like, oh, those red states, good thing we're civilized people here in California or something, right? Like, but I mean, basically it's like, I don't know, like I want, like I want, like I just think, I think about like, who I was as a kid there, and it's crazy to think that like I mean, like I didn't really know anything about trans people at all until I like left Florida, but to think, I'm just like thinking about myself if I was like growing up there now, if I was like 14 and I had access to TikTok, like what I like, which sounds its own kind of hell, but things I would have been exposed to, but also to know that like maybe I also wouldn't have access to those drugs is crazy. Is just it's
and like the prevalence of knowing these people, there's all these people that like fucking hate you. Like that's like a wild thought to me when I consider being a trans kid right now, because like as trans adults, we're lucky that we have the presence of mind and the wherewithal to be like, yeah, well, fuck those people. I can think about this critically and logically and put aside my emotions until I go cry in my closet at night. But like, but like kids, like I have a trans niece who's like a teenager, and like I hope she doesn't look at the news that much, because I don't know, I feel like it like would affect kids so harshly, And I can't imagine being a teenager in Florida or like a trans kid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to fall back on the trope of like the Zoomers will save us all, but they might. I don't know. Like it's like I do really admire how much they're really like looking into, you know, the abyss, and I'm just kind of curious to see like what they'll do, because like, you know, it's been really surreal. Like people in the journalism, you know, like I guess I've been in journalism long enough to see people's careers change, and it's like now seeing like people who were the sort of like New York Times darlings kind of cross over, and it's like people who basically make their career on like being edgy or having things like provocative to say. It's like, what's left to do but just go and like talk about how like, you know, Twitter is like shadow banning conservatives, and like, you know, isn't that interesting? And
not really.
Like, it's not. No, it's like, and like, yeah, Twitter denied it, but so what? We knew they were doing it.
Yeah.
Like, So I don't know. I remain hopeful. I do wonder if journalism ultimately will. This is me personally, but like I'm sort of thinking like, are there other ways that I can like tell stories or do work that might be more effective? Because like, you know, it is just such a tidal wave, like of disinformation to kind of like rally oneself against, and I don't know, like I kind of want to just go make like experimental theater or something at this point.
Yeah.
Like
Puppets.
It seems like we're in a place where there's nothing that we can say to certain groups that will change their minds. So that puts us in a hard place.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Like what?
That's always mine. Like, what can people do who aren't like in the position of like being a reporter or things like that? Like just us, like.
Well, I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, one, like if you're like a person who is just trying to figure out what, like trying to just understand the news, and like one thing that I think is really telling is if you basically kind of just like do what I just like follow the links and just like see where all these things lead. And, you know, transphobic activism will always lead to other forms of hate. Like it just is a truth.
Yes.
And so like, you know, if you don't like Nazis and you don't like, you know, anti-abortion activists, like there's no way to be an anti-trans person without also engaging in that kind of material as well, and kind of peddling it. But in terms of like how to talk to people, I mean, like I said, I don't really know, but I think that, you know, maybe this is a time when just telling truth, like just reporting the truth, like isn't enough. Maybe this is a time where it's like, maybe this is a time when like things like fiction or movies or other kinds of media are really important, because ways of communicating like emotional truths can sometimes short circuit the way that people's logical brains work. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Like presenting stories of like there was a wave of like gay, like specifically male movies that like
Gay male movies? Are those a thing?
You know, I'm a bit of an aficionado. You may not know this, but it's kind of my favorite thing. Yeah, I mean, cis man. Anyway, like, you know, like Brokeback Mountain and stuff like that,
sure.
that like kind of helped to dispel things for a lot of groups of like, oh, gay people have emotions too. Wild.
Right,
Or like, you know,
right,
like,
yeah.
so like presenting human stories to people in a way that's like takes them, give them a little fantasy world to give them information, whatever.
Yeah. I do think that like emotions can really short circuit the kind of entrenched logic brains that people have, and so that's where I'm hopeful right now, I guess.
yeah,
Like, damn, when we get trans movie?
yeah. We'll send you home on a flash drive.
Yeah,
of a bunch
yeah.
of movies on it. Homosexual movies.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I don't know. I have a lot of them. I subscribe to many a website, actually, for that.
So what's on the horizon for reporting on Florida and just like trans rights in general? Like,
Yeah. So right now I'm an independent reporter, so it's kind of like figuring out what like outlet's going to work with and who's has, you know, an appetite for it. It does seem like a bit of an uphill battle in terms of getting people to care about this. I don't know. I mean, I think for me personally, it's going to be continuing to follow this. I've been talking. I might put together a podcast on this and kind of follow it. And I've also thought about trying to just like write a book about this. So I think what I will do will probably be something that's going to have to incubate for a while. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, just because I don't know. It's hard. And I don't know.
It is hard.
And I don't know.
People don't have a benchmark for what being trans is. It's like we see a Nazi and we're like, that's bad. It's pretty easy to say that's bad, but it's hard when like you see like anti-trans things coming on because you have no benchmark for this stuff,
What do you mean by benchmark?
As in like a cis person that lives in Florida that's a cis het living human being. Mm-hmm. They don't know what HRT even is. They don't really know any of this stuff. So it's like they look at drag and they think it's kind of the same thing as being trans
or something.
Yeah, so they have no idea. There's no benchmark for like they probably don't even know a trans person to say like, oh, this trans person's just living their life in a normal way.
I know for a fact that I've been the first trans person that like people in my life have met. Well, they've told me as much, but I'm like the first out trans person. Anyway.
Exactly.
I'm sure whatever. Like even through this podcast, we've been saying HRT, and I'm almost certain someone is going to be listening to this and not like that stands for hormone replacement therapy. Like people don't know the like things.
Yeah.
So that's in my little end note of all this is for people to educate themselves. Yeah. And I know that sucks because you have to do the work.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Well,
you meet some cool people.
Yeah.
We really talked about the extremes in this podcast too, because I don't believe that everyone in Florida is like this.
No, of course not.
Yeah. And it's the same thing when they talk about, like crazy trans people. It's like every trans person's not crazy by any means. Like we're talking about the two like far extremes.
Oh, you said something yesterday or the day before about how like that's how people see trans people, but it's like us looking at conservatives and it's like Alex Jones.
Yeah. Like everyone's not Alex Jones.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Of course. And I think most people aren't. And I think that a lot of people like Alex Jones, go to extremes because that's how you get, followers, right? I do think that a lot of people move to Florida in particular, as with other places like California, or even places like Arizona, or just places to kind of like get away from other people because they want to start over or they want to like be weird or something like that. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think I would imagine that most people in Florida like don't care or
Agreed.
or at least like don't care in any like real material way. But but also again, it's like it's easier to make people care about this to get them on your team than it is to like, have a comprehensive COVID policy. Right.
Yeah.
So, I think that, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer, I was talking with my family about this too, is like, I would love, I like, are there organizations out there that like are basically kind of like trans ambassadors? Like I don't think it was like PFLAG, but like I think they're out there still. But
it doesn't even matter because if people don't want to hear that stuff, they're not going to hear it. It's like.
But maybe there are people who just don't know, and maybe just want to.
I think that's where what I tell people is that like working. This sounds really defeatist. Working on a global scale isn't realistic in these kind of situations. And it's doing stuff locally where like you are talking to your family and educating your ignorant, maybe not in a malicious way, family on trans people and trans rights and what's going on in the world right now. And then maybe they go talk to their like friends at like whatever old people do, and like and
I think old people have friends too.
Yeah, well, well, I was gonna say like at Bridge Club, and I was like, what's not? This isn't the Golden Girls. Well, anyway,
I'm sure there's still many in Bridge Club in Florida.
True. But then those people go talk to, and it's a chain reaction of like education and acceptance that happens because of like your more small, minute interactions.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
Maybe the Corn Corner should do bridge outreach.
Ooh.
A Bridge Club outreach.
Yeah.
That would be very
Maybe
fun.
we do that.
Great idea.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to solve the issue in Florida. With
with Bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why didn't you think of that?
Yeah.
Sponsorship from Bicycle, maybe?
Yeah.
Bicycle playing cards.
Exactly. Well, where can people find you?
Oh, I am on Twitter until it shuts down at Sam Listens, and on Instagram at Sam Listens. SamGreenspan.org is my website, and I also am the creator of a podcast called Bellwether, which is a speculative journalism podcast. So it's true stories told within the framework of a sci-fi radio serial.
That's
That sounds
amazing.
sick.
Where can we find it?
At bellwether.show, or my
Amazing.
website too.
Fuck yeah.
Great.
Cool. Thank
Anywhere,
you for
anywhere
sharing
podcasts are served. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. This is
You're
delight.
so welcome. We can high five.
Can we high five? Can we hug?
Let's go play bridge.
Let's go play bridge.
All right, we're gonna play bridge.
We need another person though. I think.
Is it?
We're gonna learn the
It's a
rules.
four. It's a four. You know, there's like a north, south, east, west thing. Yeah.